Senator Khera.
Yes, thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. And tonight I rise to speak about the National Broadband Network, a world-class infrastructure project under Labor, but which has fallen victim to Mr Turnbull's habit of talking big and failing to deliver. In fact, the Prime Minister's management of the NBN has become nothing other than a cruel joke. We know that in April 2013, the now Prime Minister promised his second-rate NBN would cost $29.5 billion. In December 2013, the Prime Minister said that his second-rate NBN would cost $41 billion. In August this year, the now Prime Minister indicated his second-rate NBN would cost up to $56 billion and told us that we can all have real confidence in those numbers. We've also had recent revelations that NBN is considering replacing the Optus HFC network that was supposed to make up a key part of the second-rate NBN. And so this means that the cost is going to blow out again. Mr Acting Deputy President, you may recall that recently I spoke about the NBN and the impact which the government's mismanagement has had on a couple of regions of Queensland. In particular, the experience of the Diamantina and Barcoo Shire councils. And just touch on that again briefly, just to remind the Senate that I spoke with Ms Julie Groves, the Mayor of Barcoo, about the fact that they thought that they had secured a plan. They thought they had secured the agreement of the then Prime Minister, Mr Abbott, to future-proof their drought-affected regions. They believed that they had got commitment from the Prime Minister to $7 million for their broadband project, which was going to, amongst other things, lay fibre optic cable to the towns in the two shires, including Birdsville, Baduri, Windora, Stonehenge and Junda. So, and as I advised the Senate on the last occasion, they were absolutely devastated when they found out that the Prime Minister reneged on that commitment, which was given to them personally. There was a handshake and it was a personal commitment that was given, but which has now, as we know, been reneged on. So only Labor understands that access to the National Broadband Network is essential to all Australians, no matter what location. In communities without access to the NBN, an imminent concern is that overseas trained GPs in these communities may leave rural locations due to their substandard internet access. And this is according to advice from the rural doctors. So this mismanagement of the NBN is, I think, a matter that Australians are becoming more and more concerned about. And Mr Acting Deputy President, this prompted me a couple of weeks ago to hold a forum in the Queensland Federal Electorate of Dickson on the matter of the NBN. And I can tell you, Mr Acting Deputy President, it was a very well attended forum. We had almost 120 residents of the Electorate of Dickson who came along, and most of the residents of Dickson do not know when they're going to be able to access the high-speed broadband. But for some, Mr Acting Deputy President, it's even worse, because they do not have internet connectivity at any speed, fast or slow. This unfortunate group in the electorate, I'm sure there are many such groups around the country, have fallen into a black hole of telecommunications that's been created by this government with its redesign of the NBN, a redesign that we know will deliver poorer broadband at a high price over a longer period. One of the problems that's become apparent to me as a result of our recent NBN forum is that there are regions in Queensland that are not only without an NBN, but they are at the same time not receiving any alternative slower speed service from their local telcos. The reason is quite simple. The telcos won't upgrade existing network capacity because it will be replaced by the NBN, but there's no prospect of NBN coming to them anytime soon. When Labor was in government, more than 40,000 homes and businesses in Dickson were scheduled to get super-fast fibre-to-the-premises NBN connections by the end of 2016. Fortunately, work had already started on Labor's NBN such that residents and businesses in parts of Peachtree and Murrumba Downs are enjoying world-class fibre-to-the-premise connections. These are the few lucky ones. However, suburbs like Brendale, Launton, Warner, Bray Park and many others are being left to wait for a second-rate version of the NBN that will have to be upgraded down the track. In essence, Prime Minister Turnbull has created three classes of people in Australia: those lucky enough to have fibre all the way to the home, those who have pre-NBN broadband and are condemned to receive this government's inferior NBN sometime in the future, and those who have no broadband whatsoever and no clear prospect of getting it. Mr Acting Deputy President, let me paint the picture of broadband in Queensland by telling you the stories of just a few of my constituents. First, there is Deb, who had been trying to get access to ADSL internet at her house in Kashmir since July. She has contacted all of the major telcos and none are able to provide her with a service. Not now, not at any time in the future. The local exchange won't be upgraded because NBN is on its way. NBN was due to arrive in Deb's area in September, but it's now been postponed until March 2016. The area that she moved into has many new houses under construction and more land releases, but no broadband connection is being provided to all of these homes. Then there is Andrew, a software developer who works in Brisbane in a transport modelling consultancy. Andrew moved to Bunya 6 months ago with his fiancée. Bunya is an hour's drive from Brisbane to the north, and given Andrew's work involves sitting at a computer most of the time, Andrew was planning on working from home some days each week to save on the long commute and spend some time with his fiancée. Andrew didn't think that an internet connection would be a problem. Sadly, Andrew's assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Over the last 5 months, he's applied to IONET for ADSL, Telstra for cable internet, TPG for ADSL, Optus for a home 4G connection, and Telstra for ADSL. None of these inquiries have resulted in Andrew getting a solution that will allow him to work from home. One possibility he explored with Telstra was to get a HFC connection to his home from the HFC cable running down his street. Telstra took 2 months to provide a quote for this work. The quote to run a cable 200 metres to his house was for $16,500. And finally, there is Kath. 2 years ago, Kath moved house to a suburb of Brisbane called Eaton's Hill. Kath and her husband each run a home-based business, and they also have teenage children. So you can imagine their surprise when they discovered that in their new home they could not get a home phone, fax or internet connection. It was the same story. The Albany Creek exchange that would serve her suburb was not being upgraded because the NBN was coming. Telstra was unable to advise when that would be, and 2 years later, Kath is desperate. To satisfy the needs of her business and her family, Kath is now paying over $400 each month for a toggle that provides her with 55 gigabytes of data. And despite paying this amount for internet, Kath still does not have a home phone or fax line. The Coalition's 3-year plan expects to have a fibre-to-the-node service in Eaton's Hill by 2017 at the earliest, and some areas not due to connect until sometime in 2018. That means Kath, who has already waited for 2 years, will have to wait another 2 to 3 years to get internet. Kath will have to wait a total of 5 years just to get a phone line. Mr Acting Deputy President, I wonder if the Prime Minister would be so tolerant of his NBN if he had recently purchased a house only to discover that it's no internet access and no telcos willing to provide it. Under the former Labor government, the fibre-to-the-premises rollout of broadband was scheduled to connect around 42,000 homes in Dixon by June 2016. By the time of the election in 2013, Labor had begun construction to connect approximately 7,500 homes and businesses in Dixon. As a result, this group of residents has surged ahead of other Australians, receiving the world-class fibre-to-the-premises network that Labor promised. Most will be connected by March 2016. Mr Turnbull promised before the last election that these areas that needed broadband would get it first, but instead we have a total failure in the delivery of this inferior broadband network. Instead of expediting its rollout at lower cost as promised, the government has actually taken out some of our regions, taken them backwards, to the point where a simple telephone line has become a privilege. Labor believes that Australians deserve better than the second-rate version of the NBN that Prime Minister Turnbull has promised. The horror stories that we are getting today is only just the beginning of a travesty that is unfolding before our eyes.